Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to the Guilty as Charged podcast, coming to you live on a Monday evening. It's been some wonky schedules a little bit here on the Guilty as Charged podcast. It's a little wonky again this week. Appreciate the flexibility for anybody tuning in live today, and appreciate the flexibility of Tyler. We're both on summer vacation though, so it's that good time of year where we can be a little flexible with our schedules. Am I right, Tyler?
Oh yeah. No, you're like, are you free at 7 today? Like, yeah, I was free at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and all that today. So anytime could have worked. Wish we had a bit more to talk about, even though we're recording very late today, but it is what it is.
Yes, of course. You guys had a busy weekend. Of course, have to give a quick shout out to Miss Andrea Schoon, Tyler's mom, for a very happy birthday. You guys got to celebrate at what's that music? Knott's Berry Farm. Yeah.
Yes.
So big shout out to Mama Schoon. Obviously, she's amazing. She's wonderful. We appreciate all her great support. Appreciate her cooking for hosting us those 2 times. So she's the best, and I have to give her a quick shout out to start today.
I do agree. I'm very biased, but I do believe she is the best. She raised us 4 kids, and we all turned out to be, mildly useful, well-adjusted human beings. So yes, happy birthday, late birthday to my mom. We went to Knott's. It was great. We saw the movie Bring Her Back, which was depressing. So
yeah, I'm not sure I would have chosen that one for a birthday celebration.
We're like, yeah, let's go see, a scary movie. And it was just kind of sad. So that was how we finished out the evening for her birthday. But she got to spend it with family, and that's what she would have wanted no matter what.
Yeah, there you go. It is also Father's Day coming up, so shout out to all the dads. Hope to be joining your ranks at this time next year. So hopefully you can celebrate, whatever dad is in your life, whether that's biological or otherwise. Hopefully you can celebrate with your dads and give them a grill or whatever they're hoping for. So my dad and parents are in town this week, so my dad and I are going to be going golfing on Thursday, and should be a ton of fun.
Yeah, and Justin Herbert's my daddy.
Okay, Jay Herbo in the chat.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Hey, whoa.
Good stuff. You very fun show today for you guys on a Monday, June 9th. But there was some Charger speculation with a certain corner who's been released, Mr. Jaire Alexander. Rashawn Slater showed up today to promo day. We were hoping for some more interviewee, clickbaity kind of stuff to come out from today. Unfortunately, that wasn't really the case, but we'll talk about some things, and then we'll take some questions for today as well. Quick shout out to our guy Mark, who has shown up in the chat from Germany. It's 4 a.m. where he's at, so very early morning. Appreciate you hopping in here. Also have NSN in here. He's always in here though, but 7:35 in Asia from Mr. NSN. So appreciate all you guys internationally showing us some love tonight. Okay, before we begin, of course, have to tell you guys about our friends over at PrizePicks, the best and easiest way to consume daily fantasy sports. Obviously, the basketball playoffs are wrapping up, but the action is still heating up on PrizePicks, the best place to cash in your favorite sports. Tomorrow is Tuesday. They obviously do several discounts across several different sports on Tuesdays, usually up to 25%. So make sure and check that out. Obviously, the basketball game is tomorrow, so unfortunately no Wednesday promotion, but I believe game 4 is on Friday. So there is obviously Flex Friday, where you are able to hop in and set your lineup and not lose money on that particular day. Flex Friday, where you can opt in and tap the checkbox in your lineup builder to be eligible for the protected play. Choose squares from any game on the board. If your lineup does not win, you get your net losses back in promo funds up to your promo limit as soon as the lineup settles. Again, that is PrizePicks Flex Friday. Definitely make sure and check that out. You guys, the best way to support our show and PrizePicks is to download the app, use the code GUILTY to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that is code GUILTY in the PrizePicks app to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring this show and every show that we do here on the Guilty as Charged podcast. Okay, let's start with the Chargers specific news here. Mr. Rashawn Slater was in the building for promo day. He's one of many players across the league right now who are and have not been showing up to OTAs as they continue to kind of negotiate with their respective teams as it pertains to contract extensions. This draft class, Rashawn Slater's draft class of 2021, has several marquee top of the market potential players who are due for contract negotiations and have not gotten those contracts extended just quite yet. Micah Parsons is another one in this particular draft class. So it's not only Rashawn Slater, several other members of his draft class are doing the same kind of thing. But Rashawn Slater was at promo day today. We have no idea if he's going to participate in minicamp starting tomorrow, but he was there. Do you have any thoughts on that, Tyler?
Yes and no, and I do have to kind of throw it back to you in a bit to, if you want to share more, explain more. But at a minimum, it's just nice to see that he exists and that he is around, and clearly isn't like, it's not a sour, negative, awful, ugly contract negotiation going on that I'd imagine. Like, he showed up for this. Will he be there moving forward? I don't know. When will he sign that contract? I have no idea. But it seems like at least a showing of good faith and good things for at least both sides. So does it mean a ton? Not really. For both of us, like, yes, some Chargers fans have been like worried about this, but you and I are firmly like in the belief that this will get done. I don't know when. Could be July, could be August, but it'll get done. There's no way this doesn't get done. So I'm happy to see him there. This doesn't really like change my optimism towards the deal getting done, because like, I 100% guarantee that it will get done.
Yeah, I think that's fair. So I've gotten in some trouble online for sharing certain news items in the past, but what can I say? When I get news, I have to share it. So I shared this in the Discord the other day. The Chargers negotiations with Rashawn Slater obviously have been very cordial. The Chargers are never really a team that is going to disrespect their offers. Obviously there's been times like Melvin Gordon and, with Austin Eckler where, they've demanded a trade or they've sought out other options, but it's always a very cordial, friendly negotiation. Ed McGuire, I think, generally is one of the best contract negotiators in the league, and the Chargers are very fortunate to have him. Obviously, the Chargers have kind of operated with him under a certain parameter and lack of resources, frankly, that other teams don't necessarily have to worry about. So he has to kind of work in the margins a lot more than a lot of other people in his position do around the league. But generally speaking, contract negotiations with the Chargers, with Ed McGuire, are very cordial, very positive. And that seems to be the case right now with Rashawn Slater. The overall number, like in terms of the APY, has been set. Like there's no real, change that's been going on there. And that's kind of how these things work is, the agency will come in and say, this is our number. The team will say, this is our number. They'll meet somewhere else. I don't have information on the total number, but I don't believe he's going to be like the highest paid offensive lineman ever. I think it's going to kind of, be above the Christian Darrisaw contract, maybe challenge the Trent Williams contract. Trent Williams, his APY number is 27.5. But Penei Sewell and Tristan Wirfs are currently the two highest. Sewell is at 28 even. Tristan Wirfs is at 28.01 or 28.1, I think it might be. I don't think he's going to be 28.2 or 28.5 or whatever that thing is. But from what I can gather, the Chargers do want some injury insurance baked into the contract, which I think is a totally understandable thing for them to want, given his tricep and bicep and chest injuries, as well as his back injuries from college. The Chargers are willing to pay him more if they can have those kind of injury protections. Rashawn Slater and his camp they do not want those injury protections, and their argument is that he has really only missed time the one season when he tore his tricep, but he's played through the 2 ankle sprains. He's played through the pec injury this past year. He's shown that he is tough enough and capable enough to continue to play through those kind of injuries, and he's willing enough to do that. So that's the main hangup from what I have been told, is that the Chargers want some injury protections, and Rashawn Slater and his camp do not want those protections in his contract. They are not pushing for like a fully guaranteed contract. It doesn't sound like he's pushing for highest paid offensive tackle in the league, which really is only probably going to save the Chargers like $500,000, which is a lot of money for us, but not a lot of money for players. So it's a very friendly, cordial contract. And I think as soon as those injury negotiations work themselves out, I think this contract will get signed. I still firmly believe that this will ultimately get done before training camp begins because the Chargers value him too much. Jim Harbaugh values him too much. And he loves being with the Chargers from everything that I have heard. So for those that have been panicking, you should not be panicking about this particular contract negotiation.
Yeah, definitely should not be panicking. So maybe not necessarily specifically for the Rashawn Slater contract, but maybe in general, like what do injury protections look like for teams in contracts? Is that strictly how much guaranteed money they pay out, or how the timing of that, or the bonuses, or what does that look like?
Yeah, guaranteed money is a big deal with injury incentives. A lot of teams will put, incentives into each contract based on like how many games played. Certain players will have, statistical incentives. If you hit $1,000, you get $1 million kind of thing. 1,000 yards, not $1,000, excuse me. With offensive linemen, it's almost always games played. And do you hit an all-pro? Do you hit a Pro Bowler? Because there's no statistics, right? Although I'd be curious if, like, in the future, if guys would start pushing for like PFF grades or something like that, or pass blocking efficiency ratings, maybe. I don't know, man, because the teams use that information. So
yeah,
it's all we have for offensive line statistics and grades. So I don't know. Maybe in the future that might be something some guys would put forward. But the guaranteed number is the biggest thing when it comes to injury perspective, because all these contracts have a ton of incentives in them. But if your contract guarantees a low number, then obviously you're less likely to see that money. So I think it's mostly, the guaranteed aspect of things when it comes to how this particular contract is going, because he can't say, oh, well, if you get 1,000 yards, here's X, Y, and Z. If you get 750 yards, here's X, Y, and Z. It's basically games played. And so that makes the guaranteed number a much more difficult negotiation.
Gotcha. And for those Chargers fans who are like, I've mentioned it, I don't think Joe Alt in the situation changes anything for them. Yes, they do have a great offensive tackle who could play the left side. You move him to the left, you now have a problem on the right. I don't think he changes anything for them.
Yeah, the Chargers are very excited about Joe Alt. Obviously, Greg Roman went on record and said that he thinks that Joe will be a first-team All-Pro this year, which could definitely happen. Great. That was one of our bold predictions. So
yes,
apparently Joe Alt is up to 330 pounds, which is fantastic, and he looks a lot thicker as well, which is great to see. So he's getting that grown man strength, but Joe Alt does not prevent you from he doesn't prevent you from keeping a premier left tackle. Like imagine the Eagles letting Jordan Mailata walk because they have Lane Johnson, or vice versa. Like you want, every team would kill to have the Chargers tackle situation outside of the Eagles and maybe the Buccaneers, but I guess the Lions might be in that conversation too, depending how you feel about Taylor Decker. But the Chargers want to keep Rashawn Slater around. They want to keep him happy because he is so good at his job. And Joe Alt might eventually become better than Rashawn Slater. I think that's very much in the cards for Mr. Joe Alt. But at the end of the day, all of last season, the Chargers very rarely sent help to Rashawn Slater. They always would send help towards Joe Alt. Not always, but whenever they sent help to a tackle, it was Joe Alt. It was never Rashawn Slater. Rashawn Slater, I think, had the third highest island rating on PFF, which means he was left one-on-one like a lot. So the team publicly has said all the offensive line stuff right, but then last year they left Rashawn on his own the entire season. So it's very much a system and a team that really values what Rashawn Slater can do. And it makes sense. Like this particular regime, whether it's Greg Roman, whether it's Jim Harbaugh, they've always had a premier left tackle. Obviously Staley, not Deuce Staley, that's the running back, Joe Staley, the tackle in San Francisco, Ronnie Stanley, the tackle in Baltimore. So this regime knows what elite left tackle play looks like, and they know that Rashawn Slater can be that guy.
Yeah, I wouldn't even have been worried if it were Tom Telesco negotiating this and being the GM, right? Like he would, honestly, that's the most likely thing, is that the first round player is brought back. With the Chargers under this regime, like, it's what's above 100% guaranteed. I guess 105% with Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, the Chargers, for all of their cheap kind of stuff, they never let a premier player at a premium position walk. Like they will always take care of that player on a second contract. At least they have in my lifetime as a fan. It's always like the Eric Weddle situation. He was a safety. The running back situations,
Every
like
linebacker of the last
linebacker situations. But when it comes to like, they know if they have an elite player at a premium position, they will keep that player around and they will pay him handsomely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Our audio audience is going to take a quick break. Our YouTube audience is going to continue right along next. Okay, the next thing we wanted to talk about here, and then we'll get in some questions. So, like Isaac has a question about Tom Telesco's interview recently. There's a Trey Hendrickson question, all that stuff. We'll talk about that in a second. But the Green Bay Packers have released cornerback Jaire Alexander. And we're going to throw Jalen Ramsey into this conversation as well, as the Dolphins continue to look at potentially trading him. Obviously the Chargers are in a much better spot at the cornerback position than they were at this time last year, as we kind of discussed this past episode of where the Chargers cornerback room is in terms of competition and things like that. We've talked a little bit about some players we'd like to see the Chargers add, but when it comes to Jaire Alexander or Jalen Ramsey, general cornerback potential addition, where are you at with the Chargers adding to that room?
Yeah, before free agency, so like Alexander was someone we discussed. Ramsey, I think I didn't even know at what point the Dolphins were at with that contract and whether we're trading him or not. But I wanted the Chargers to add some sort of veteran presence at corner, and I respectfully mean that like above Jackson in terms of like quality of that player. So I threw out like Rasul Douglas, but we had done different corners that we added to the Chargers roster with our simulations. So I still would like them to add somebody. And of the two, given where they're at, with one being released and now the less expensive contract, granted injury history, and the other being quite expensive, even though the guarantees are zero after this year, still you got to, at this current juncture, you have to trade for them. You have to take on the contract. There's several more years there. So what I'm trying to say is I'm more in favor of the Alexander signing. Now, do we forget all of the injury issues? Do I think Ben Herbert makes a miracle happen in a year? Like, no, I don't think so. I don't think you're bringing him on assuming that this is an instant all-pro. He's going to play all the games and all is going to be great. But I think this is exactly the kind of player and situation and contract and kind of need at this point that Joe Ortiz, Jesse Minter, Klingscale, etc. would pounce on. Is he the same all-pro player that he was? No, I don't think he'll ever get back to that. But, right now the Chargers are in a battle where we know Tarheeb still will be on the field. In the slot, on the outside, he'll be on the field. He'll play a lot of snaps. You could argue, other than like Derwin, he's going to play the most snaps of any player on defense this year if he's healthy. But
I would expect that, yeah.
Yeah. But after that, and Klingscale and these guys have said as much, everyone's just competing right now for the other spots. We think it could be Cam Hart, but we officially have not seen him practice just yet. That might happen tomorrow, but we don't know officially how much, what capacity. Is he full? Can he play the whole year? The rest of the guys, they're all competing, and the Chargers have admitted they are all competing for to see who the best guys are, which basically means that you feel good about the depth and you feel good about the players. And I trust Jesse Minter, but you don't have that other guy just yet. Again, you love Cam Hart. I think everybody loves Cam Hart. We're not 100% sure. I think that these guys can do great work with the DBs, but it's not a great group. Alexander presents that opportunity to take a swing, and even if it does miss, you're in a good spot anyway. I just think it's kind of best case scenario. You brought him up as a trade candidate 2-3 months ago when we did this exercise for certain players, and we were both kind of even on board then with the risks of taking on him and his contract and the injury history, even via trade. Now, with him being released, I think that only goes up for both of us.
Yeah, I think I would understand why some people would be concerned about trading for him, given his injury history. So looking at where he's been at, he has played 14 games the last 2 seasons. 2 of those games he left early to injury. So he only played 361 total snaps in 2024. 560 in 2023. And if you go back to 2021, he only played 227. So 3 of the last 4 years, he's dealt with major injuries. And we're talking about like knee injuries, we're talking about ankle injuries, shoulder injuries. So it's definitely a situation where if you're talking about a trade, there's definitely, risks at play. But I don't think the Packers were really ever going to be holding out for that high level of a trade package. I mean, their best corner now without him is Nate Hobbs, who we know it was like the Raiders' 4th best corner last year. So that cornerback room is dicey, and they didn't really draft anybody to come in and compete for it. So them releasing him to me shows that like they themselves were very concerned about his injury history, which makes sense to me. They're still paying him a high-end elite kind of contract. Now, it's not going to cost you that level of contract now. I think the number I saw floated online was maybe like a contract value of up to $10 million, but really is kind of like a base value of like 5 million and lots of injury incentives, again, kind of bringing it back to that point. So I think he would be semi-affordable. Now, the problem for the Chargers is that he has ties to several different other organizations. He's very familiar with Raheem Morris, and the Falcons need a cornerback. They also could be in play for Jalen Ramsey, for the same reason. There apparently is going to be a big market for Jaire Alexander now that he is a free agent. So maybe that $10 million doesn't get it done, and maybe that kind of puts him out of the Chargers price range. But in terms of should they pursue him, I think absolutely they should. They have done the work to provide themselves the insurance. If they bring somebody in like him who gets injured, well, you're just right back to where you are right now, which I think they're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, and the injuries are more recent, obviously, and arguably more severe, but Mekhi Becton played 1 game in the span of 2 years before he finally kind of hit with the Jets, and then played only 15 games last year in the regular season for the Eagles. So it's not like the Chargers won't pay someone with a troubling injury history, because Becton, with Chad Alexander in attendance, missed, what is that at that point? 17 plus 6, 33 games in the span of 2 years there. So again, now he put in 31 games up the last 2 years, whereas Alexander just put up 14, but it's not like they won't take a chance there. And in this case, like they have a lot more insurance at corner than they do at interior right now. That's for sure.
Yeah, and even at corner, they've taken some risks. They signed Christian Fulton last year, and granted, it was cheaper, and there was very low expectations for that. But hypothetically speaking, if you have, maybe Jaire Alexander isn't like ever going to get to first team All Pro again, but if he can be a high end, corner, maybe he makes a Pro Bowl instead of first team All Pro. Then you have him. You would have Tariq still, and then Dante Jackson, Cam Hart, kind of fighting out for that third spot. Plus Derwin James in the slot, like that creates a lot of flexibility and options for Jesse Minter to kind of mess around with things. You can make the same argument for Jalen Ramsey. Of course, he's in this conversation as well. But like you mentioned, you have to trade for him and probably keep him on his current contract. And there's also been some like move him to safety conversations for Jalen Ramsey, which has kind of always been around him outside of when he was in Jacksonville. But like, when Brandon Staley with the Rams kind of floated, or flirted with the idea of moving him to safety, and the Vic Fangio last year kind of did the same thing in Miami. So there is some kind of conversations about, Jalen Ramsey being closer towards kind of like the end of his career. Let's move him to safety kind of career arc. Whereas Jaire Alexander is firmly an outside corner right now. So I'm not opposed to either one. I think both of them would be tremendous additions to this Charger secondary. I just think that Jaire Alexander will cost less and provide them a boost where they actually need it, because Jalen Ramsey at this point, if he's a slot safety hybrid, well, they already have that in Derwin James. Tariq still is kind of a slot outside kind of hybrid. So I don't know if they need help there, but outside corner, I could definitely see them looking to play there. And maybe in this specific scheme, maybe they think Jalen Ramsey could be that guy. But I think of the two, I would still prefer Jaire Alexander just because he's cheaper, and I know he can play outside right now.
Yeah, and just regarding Jalen Ramsey, real quick, not that these things can't be changed, but he's a $16.6 million cap hit this year,
Yeah.
and then 25, 27, and then technically a $36.1 million dollar cap hit in 2028. No guarantees the next 3 years, but
Sure.
that is part of the consideration.
Man, the Dolphins, that ship blew up in their face so hard, so quickly.
Yeah. At least they have a bunch of big nose tackles now.
Yeah, I like what they did in the draft.
Yeah.
But I think, there's less questions about Jalen Ramsey's play. Obviously, like he can still play at a really high level. His fit, I think both of these players would fit. I think both of these players would be excellent additions, like I mentioned. It's just kind of like the cost of acquisition. So I forget. This might have been on Daniel Popper's Substack, but he was kind of pointing out that maybe some of the reason why the Chargers have been a little bit more willing to kind of move around the draft boards the last couple of years in terms of trading out of spots, trading up, etc. So they had 9 picks in 2024. They had 9 picks this year. Next year, they only have 6 picks, and they're not getting any compensatory picks for this year's free agency class. So does that maybe take a potential trade off the table for the Chargers, and maybe they go after somebody who's cut instead, like a Jaire Alexander or some defensive tackle or offensive lineman or whoever gets cut at training camp? I think is something to maybe keep an eye on if they're not willing to trade a 5th round pick next year, because they don't really have much flexibility. So they don't have a 7th round pick. That 7th round pick is going to Tennessee for Elijah Molden. So they have their own 6. They only have their own 6 picks for next year, and that's it. But that does give them some limited flexibility as opposed to previous years.
So in 2024, they gave up a 2026 7th round pick for Elijah Molden.
That is correct.
Good Lord. well done, Joe Ortiz. My goodness gracious.
There's been some very smart transactions that Mr. Joe Ortiz has done, but I think in terms of the value he gained, I think Elijah Molden, it has to be at the top of that list.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Wow. Like they got borderline elite safety play last year for a 7th round pick 2 years later.
2 years later. Man, that's pretty good. But no, to your point, I do agree with if they don't have as many picks next year, I think they would go after the guy who could net them a comp pick in the following year. Yeah.
And Jalen Ramsey he shouldn't be that expensive in a trade, given where the Dolphins are at. Like they have zero leverage over anything.
No.
But if like there's a bidding war going on, and there's the Cowboys have always been rumored to be interested in Jalen Ramsey. If they're at the table with like a 5th round pick, and the Rams are at the table with a 5th round pick, and then the Falcons come in with a 4th round pick, like I just can't see the Chargers getting into that kind of negotiation. Like I think Jalen Ramsey, he's still a very good player. It's just the trade cost, I think, might be a little bit out of the Chargers, wheelhouse here.
Yeah.
Joey Lewis points out the Chargers do have $26.8 million in cap space. So the Chargers have the money to afford either one. But, in terms of cap space, Jaire Alexander would probably only cost you like a $5 million cap hit this year, as opposed to, what did you say Ramsey's was? It was like 26 or something like that.
I think it was, this year wasn't too bad. In terms of just specifically this year with no new deal done, and the Dolphins not taking on something, it's 16.6.
Okay. So that would take the Chargers down to about 10, or
basically their emergency fund left.
Yeah.
And they still need to sign Trey Harris, which will be about $2.5 million this year.
Yep. And Slater's extension will bring that number down, because he's on his 5th-year option right now. So
yes,
theoretically they should get some more.
Derwin would probably take a new deal to play with his buddy.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, Ramsey and Derwin have wanted to play together forever, but I don't know. I wonder. Huh?
No, nothing.
I wonder if Staley was still the coach, if they would have made that trade actually happen a few years ago.
Yeah, they probably would have had the 32nd ranked defense, but it would have been,
the media, the vibes in the secondary would be incredible. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it'd have been amazing to listen to that group.
Yeah, 100%. All right, Tyler. Any other final thoughts on Jaire Alexander or Jalen Ramsey or anything else like that?
Nothing else that I can think of. Again, everybody stay on top of your rumors and make sure you're checking the sources of things. And ML football does not count as a source.
No, 100%. Okay, our audio audience is going to take one more quick break, and then we'll be right back taking some questions from the chat right now. Okay, we have a few super chats to get us started here. You guys here live, obviously send in anything that you feel like you would want us to cover, and we will get to anything in the chat. Obviously, super chats will ensure that your questions get answered. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man kicking us off says Chargers should sign Jaire and trade for Ramsey and build a time machine for 4 years ago, and we got the best CB duo light work. That is a great super chat.
That'd be good. Tony Jefferson would be 30. I think if we went 4 years ago.
Back would be 28. So
yeah, I'm all about it. Tilly would be 12, I think. But,
you would still be in middle school.
I'd be teaching Thule.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, should be fun. Excellent super chat though from
yes.
friendly neighborhood Spider-Man there.
Yes.
John Nersesian. You can let me know how to say that, John. Apologies there, but he says greetings from Chicago. I hope you guys enjoy a well-deserved break. We appreciate that. I don't know of many other Chicagoans that we have, but I have some family that live in Chicago. Great city, one of my favorites in the United States to visit. So appreciate John jumping in here, and anybody else that's from Chicago.
Yep, been there once, loved it. Dad's got some clients out there. I don't think John's one of them, but yeah, greetings back.
Yeah. And then our last super chat for now is from NSN. He says, how do you think the Chargers improved relative to AFC West teams, which are all looking way better to me, especially improved coaching?
Yeah, I think the Raiders have closed the gap for sure. I don't buy they're going to, like, there's always that, worst to first team. It's not the division that you're going to do that in. The Raiders aren't there yet. The Broncos terrify me, despite the internet piling on me for saying I was terrified of the Broncos. But fine. Hopefully the Chargers do sweep the Broncos again this year. Chiefs, how much did the Chargers improve? I don't really think the Chargers made they didn't make home run swing improvements, but they made small percentage singles in improvements to their team that I think will help them be a stable team this year. I think you and I picked like 11 to 12 wins. Yeah. I think part of that's because they can take a few hits and keep going.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about coaching, I don't think any team is going to have more improvement than the Raiders, unfortunately. But they went from the last 3 years of the most dysfunctional coaching staffs in the league, I would argue, to Pete Carroll, who, like, his career in Las Vegas is probably not going to be that long, right? Like, I think he's 70.
I think it's a 3-year deal. Yeah, I think
it's a 3-year deal. Like, he's not going to be there forever. But you're talking about Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, Patrick Graham, and the rest of their assistants, which they've done a really good job of. Like, the stability within the Raiders coaching staff, unfortunately, is much higher than it has been in quite some time. Yeah. And then you also bake into the fact that they're going from Gardner Minshew / Aiden O'Connell to Geno Smith, who isn't an elite quarterback, but he's a top 12 to 14 quarterback. Like, he's very, very good, provides them a very high floor. So there are definitely still some roster issues that they're going to have to clean up. Their wide receiver room, their corner room, their defensive tackle room, if Christian Wilkins can't play, their linebacker room. But it's going to be pretty similar to what the Chargers had, where they just went from really bad coaching to really good coaching, and we'll get better quarterback play, we'll get better running back play, etc. And so their ceiling is probably like 8 wins, but their floor with that group is probably like 7 wins. Like, I think they're a really high floor team now with Pete Carroll there. I don't think the Chiefs really improved. Like, if anything, I think they got like a little, decrease coming with, some of the guys who left, but they still have the best coach and quarterback combo in the league. And then the Broncos, I think, maybe their offense didn't improve a ton, but that roster is really, really good from the defensive perspective to offensive line to receiver. Now, if they also sign J.K. Dobbins, like their offensive roster is really, really good. Where if Bo Nix can just even be the guy he was last year, I think the Broncos are very much in the mix for a playoff perspective. But the Raiders are probably the most improved team from last year in the league.
Yeah, I think I would agree there. I've seen too many Raiders games with far worse rosters, coaches, quarterback, etc. I mean, Terrell Pryor converted to wide receiver a year later, and he almost beat the Chargers at Qualcomm. So, I definitely don't take them lightly. As long as Rashee Rice is back and healthy and legally on the field, and as long as the Chiefs receiving core can legally be on the field, I think they'll be dangerous too. And like honestly, if the Chiefs suddenly figure out their tackle situation, it's gonna be a really, really, really tough time beating them. I don't know if they will, but if suddenly things work out and there's a year two, flip for some of these players, it could be dicey.
Yeah, I didn't grade and watch Josh Simmons, the left tackle they drafted from Ohio State. But in passing, like that dude is a freak of nature. So if he's healthy and he hits for the Chiefs, then, you're talking about, again, like a very high-end offensive line, and their running back situation is pretty good. They made the Super Bowl 2 years ago with like Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster being their best two wide receivers.
Yeah.
So it at the end of the day, it's Mahomes and it's Reed and it's Kelsey. And until I see them not be that kind of level of team, I'm just not going to expect that fall off to come. I think they won 15 games last year, and obviously the last game of the year they didn't play starters. I don't think that's going to happen. But I still think I would pick them to win 13 games because that's who their quarterback and the coach are.
Yeah. And they added Jared Tillery, so
yeah. That's the other thing. They still have Spags, they still have Chris Jones, they still have Trent McDuffie. Like their defense should still be very good.
Yeah.
Our next one in here from Alan. He wants to know our thoughts on Jim Harbaugh saying that Thule and Zion are elite. This came from the Pat McAfee show, his appearance there.
What was the question?
So the question was like the differences between year one and year two, and like how the players are more bought in or less bought in heading into this offseason. And his overall point was basically he threw out the players he thinks are the Chargers core, is what I gathered here, and said these players are elite players and they train like they haven't accomplished anything. So he threw out like 12 names, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
The usual suspects, and he threw in Thule and Zion into that conversation.
So specifically regarding training, yeah, it does. I mean, Thule, we joked last year. He's like, I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to work out. So that I totally get. I have zero like doubts about Thule's work ethic. And then the same goes for Zion. By all accounts, like freak of nature, obviously workout warrior type, just needs to get it together upstairs.
Yeah. I don't have really any thoughts. I think the overall context was here's our core 10 to 12 players, and he thinks that Thule and Zion are in that conversation. We'll see about Thule. I'm very optimistic about this season, but he has been very clear that he thinks Zion Johnson should be like a premier offensive lineman publicly. Like every time that he gets a chance to praise Zion, he has done that. So publicly, this team really, truly believes in Zion Johnson. Privately, I don't know. They didn't pick up his fifth-year option, so that's kind of something. But, this is definitely an important moment for Zion Johnson. But publicly, they cannot stop talking about Zion Johnson, and they haven't stopped talking about him since they got hired.
Yeah, we'll see. As far as like if you picked 12 players who are the core guys, I definitely think Thule would be it. I mean, I drafted Thule, I think.
Yeah.
Top 10 at least. In our simulation. Zion took a bit longer.
Yeah, for sure. Wow, this is funny. Michael DeFries here. Thanks for the content. Enjoy your summer. Appreciate Michael for jumping in here. I actually know a DeFries from my church mission in Hunter, so I don't know if there's any relation there, but appreciate Michael for jumping in here. Next one from New Jersey Savage. He says, I don't know, man. I'm kind of torn with the way I hear people talk about the Chargers. It's a lot of doubting we can play up to the level that we think they can from what I hear. I just know if the run game is at... Was there the rest of this?
I don't see another comment. Maybe he just wants to know where the run game is at, or
sure. His general point, though, I think like there is a lot more doubt of the Chargers that I think people would think at some point.
Yeah, doubt on the Chargers. There was no. I think from a media perspective, there was no like, wow, they went and got like if they just got DK Metcalf and had a terrible draft, I think some people would still be talking about the Chargers better because it's like, wow, they got DK Metcalf and they'd ignore the small stuff. I think the small moves, the small stuff isn't as exciting. So yeah, I don't know. Can they? I mean, I don't know. I don't disagree that there are doubts about the Chargers though, because I have my own doubts, even though I picked like a pretty solid game wins, to loss ratio for them. I have my doubts that they can really take these players and take that next step forward and get far in the postseason, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think a lot of the media conversation around the Chargers is that they saw a team overachieve and make the playoffs. And so a lot of media members wanted them to be aggressive in the offseason so that they could make that leap into potentially being, a Super Bowl contender this year. And the Chargers took a much more measured approach, which we and most media members are not used to seeing teams do. Like, the Houston Texans are in a horrible offensive situation right now because they saw CJ Stroud's rookie year and went, we're going to push everything into for next season. And now they don't really have any kind of flexibility. Their defense is going to be fucking awesome, but their offensive line is going to be the worst offensive line in the league because they don't have they didn't have money to pay Laramie Tunsil. So the Chargers took a much more measured approach. And I think that kind of turned some media members off. Like, I think they wanted them to be more aggressive. And that's why there's been a lot more doubt publicly, nationally of where this team can go.
Yeah. And I just think ultimately that flame out in Houston following the flame out in Jacksonville. And I just think it's, you got to do it, I think, this year.
Yeah. Should Chargers fans doubt that they can get back to that kind of level? I don't think so. I think they are so well coached on defense and special teams. And even if I have some concerns about Greg Roman overall, like Jim Harbaugh's culture and everything like that, I think can overcompensate for the lack of a high-end ceiling in terms of the passing game. And then you have Justin Herbert, you have, a lot of high-end players on the roster and improved depth. So I think Chargers fans should feel comfortable with them getting back to the 10 to 12 win range. But I can understand why certain people would doubt how much they've actually elevated their ceiling in 2025.
Yeah, we'll find out week 1.
We sure will. I wanted to circle back to this Max question from Max Diaz, which is kind of adjacent to the previous conversation. Greg Roman was obviously on Chargers Weekly this last week. And they've been doing some great interviews over there. Shout out to Matt Money Smith, Chris Harry, and interviewing the coaches has been a really fun segment there. Greg Roman was on that show, and basically, like Max is saying, Roman hinted at the fact that Justin Herbert missed 3 weeks in practice and then had the ankle injuries early on in the season. His argument, I guess, is that they were not really ever able to get to, that high level of an offensive install because of Justin's injuries, because it was their first year. And he also mentioned, like Max says, that he plans on opening things up this year and wants to run the football better as well, like Max points out. Did you listen to the interview with Greg Roman? Do you have any thoughts on that or this question?
I kind of like listened to some parts about it, like the Joel comment that you mentioned earlier. This specific one, so part of me understands and agrees. We talked about it during the season last year. Without a running game, especially when J.K. Dobbins got hurt, without a true X or vertical element for them that they tried to set up with Chark that never materialized. Yeah, there was limitations with Justin Herbert's injury. Of course, there were limitations. So you can't work under center. You don't have a true run game without J.K. Dobbins when he was hurt, and Edwards was not that guy. And you had no true deep vertical X threat. So 1, 2, 3, those things really do limit what you can do. So I understand what he's saying regarding the injuries and wanted to open up things more this year. That's all fine and dandy. I also do recall Joe Lombardi saying in his second year, like, we're moving on to football 202. And I don't know what that meant because I didn't see football 202 or whatever, or 201 or whatever it was supposed to be in that second year. So on the one hand, I think they did do several things to let Greg Roman's offense express itself more, and Mekhi Becton is there as well.
Sure.
At the same time, I have my doubts because we've seen this kind of just stagnate and flatten over the course of like some years with the Ravens, for example.
Yeah, if Greg Roman were a first-year offensive coordinator, I would buy this conversation a little bit more. But we never really saw the Ravens offense evolve. We never really saw the 49ers offense evolve. The Chargers have a very simple passing concept by design. Like that was the main criticism of Greg Roman in previous stops, and Lamar Jackson never really took that next step as a passer because of Greg Roman's limited offense. And now he won MVP 2 seasons ago because he finally got to kind of flex his passing muscles a little bit more in a different offense. And so can he run a little bit more complicated offense in terms of the rushing offense? Yeah, I think they definitely could if they really wanted to. But I just don't think that Greg Roman wants to actually, have a diverse passing offense because it's safer to just be simple in terms of the passing offense. So I just think that is going to limit where he can actually open things up a little bit. In terms of stylistically, like Justin Herbert was second in the league in ADOT. They were second in the league in play action usage. So like he doesn't mean literally go more vertically. I mean, I guess they could be first in those two categories. But I just think that their passing offense is going to be what it was last year because that's how it's always been with Greg Roman.
Yeah, I don't think it'll change him a lot. I just hope it's better.
Yeah. I just need it to be more efficient. Like I don't need it to be, I don't need them to, morph this offense into, one of like a Broncos, Peyton Manning type of offense. I think I just need some more screen game in there. I need some more quick game from time to time would be great. And then you can make some improvements on the run game as well. So the offense can definitely improve. I think just the overall rushing efficiency will be better this year. And if they can, work in some short passing concepts from time to time, I think it would help the passing game a lot more as well.
I'll just throw this one out there for the chat or for you. Okay, in terms of spots moved up or down in EPA, does the Chargers offense move up more spots, or does the Chargers defense possibly move down more spots? I'm a little dubious about the defense repeating what they did last year.
Where were those rankings at? Do you have them?
Nope. I can look those things up. I can guess what they were. Let's
see if the EPA website will be quick enough.
So I have the site bookmarked, so I can open it up real quick.
So offensively, they were actually 12th in EPA per play last year. Which is a lot higher than I would have guessed, but they were very explosive last year.
Thank God for the Raiders and Patriots games.
Defensively, they were tied for fifth with the Houston Texans. If you're also including the postseason, I should say. If it's just regular season, the Chargers were fourth in defensive EPA per play and 11th in offensive EPA per play.
Yeah, I just kind of had this feeling this year that the defense, and I don't know, I did this last year. I was like, the defense isn't, and they were awesome. So maybe I'll put my foot in my mouth again, but I feel like the defense is going to drop back a little bit. Can the offense move up enough? And I'm just curious, what's the bigger movement?
So who will move more spots, I think, would be the defense. And I don't think that has to be a lot. So the Chargers ranked 12th last year. I can't see them getting higher than like 8th.
Sure.
But I think the Chargers defense could pretty realistically fall to like 12th or 13th, which is still very good. But as we talked about, the offensive schedule that they're facing this year much more difficult, at least right now. You're losing some key pieces. Obviously, Joe Bosa is kind of the big one along with Puna Ford. So I think the Chargers moving from 4th on defense to like 10th, 11th, 12th, I think is more possible than the Chargers offense moving from 12th up to like 4th or 3rd, because I just think there are so many other good offenses out there. And like we just talked about Roman's weaknesses. So I would say the defense.
Okay. I think I agree.
Our guy in Nature's Calls podcast just jumped in here, said I made a live. Well, we're about to finish, unfortunately.
He did make it though. You did
make it. Appreciate him for jumping in here, but we are at 51 minutes here. So we'll take a couple more questions and then we'll probably hop off for the evening. But big shout out to our guy here, Nature's Calls podcast, for jumping in.
Sounds good. Look for more comments or questions.
Apparently, Jim Harbaugh said that they will use Roman's predictability to their advantage.
Mickey.
I don't know if that's how that works, but
I mean, you're going to start with the Chiefs and the Broncos. I guess we'll find, or sorry, Chiefs, Raiders, and then Broncos. So we'll find out if that's if Spags, Patrick Graham, and who's the D coordinator in Broncos land? Is it still Vance?
Joseph.
Oh, it is still Vance. Sure, go for it.
Yeah, Tom says that Roman also mentioned he thinks Herbert will be running more. Maybe. I just don't think that he should. I think that you could design a couple quarterback sweeps for him a game if you really want to. And I do agree that he should scramble more.
Mm-hmm.
But like they're not going to turn this into Colin Kaepernick, where Kaepernick, I looked at this a while ago. During that 49ers run, there was a stretch of games where Kaepernick was averaging like 11 carries a game. Like that's never happening with Justin Herbert.
No, I'm happy to see him, boot more, roll out more, and be on the move more. But yeah, not definitely not 11 carries a game. Please, no.
No, definitely not. 1 or 2 designs a game, 1 or 2 scrambles a game, and I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah.
Let's try to see if there's another question that I missed. Rickay wants to know Tillery versus Bozeman, who wins? It's probably pretty close to a wash, honestly.
I can't believe I even have to think about that question.
Dude, first round draft priority is insane. Like Jerry Tillery is not somebody who should still be in the NFL, but watch him turn into like a good player for the Chiefs.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like you said, maybe it's a wash. Bozeman in the run game, Tillery in pass rushing situations.
Yeah. This is the battle of battle of the losers.
Yeah, the battle of Midway. Yeah.
Gerard says that he thinks we are a little too harsh on Greg Roman. Thought at the end of the year they were throwing more, and it was so nice. Some nice play action, I think he meant.
So I definitely think towards the end of the year, and by that I mean the second half of the Broncos game and the Raiders game and the Patriots game, I thought the offense was like, oh my God, we figured it out. Whatever happened at halftime of the Broncos game, they figured it out. I'm just a little wary about how much of that is actually like going to evolve moving forward.
Yeah. I think in general, Roman does get a lot of unnecessary hate. Like, people talk about him as if the Ravens and Chargers offenses have been horrible. It's right. Just like, for me, the issue with Greg Roman's passing offense is that when things are not on schedule, it's very, very poorly designed. When he gets to his downs and distances that he wants, the Chargers passing offense is very nice. And like it sets up off of their play action concepts very, very well. The problem is like when they get to 3rd and 8 consistently, they don't really have any answers to what the defenses are doing. And that's one of the main reasons why they lost that game in Houston, where the run defense was, keeping the Chargers in very long down and distances. And you just don't have the same kind of flexibility that some of these other teams do have with a guy like Ben Johnson or obviously Andy Reid or Kyle Shanahan, where if you're off schedule, you can still run like a high-end passing offense. So that's my issue with Greg Roman. I think that's been the thing with him in particular for a long time. But the bones of the offense are generally very sound. Like they make sense. They have a high floor. It's just the ceiling aspect of things with Greg Roman that I question and a lot of other people question. And but I do agree he generally gets a little too much hate.
Yeah, I mean, people will like, oh, he sucks. But then forget the part where McConkey did have a very good rookie season because in large part due to Greg Roman. So there are some things in there for sure. I have some things I wish that they could do better. We'll see if they can do it better this year. And I think they will.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But yeah, for me, it's just I just don't think there's a high-end ceiling of a passing offense because there's just some limitations to his offense, which is fine. But if the Chargers offense is consistently in the 8 to 12 range with him, then I think they're generally fine.
Yeah.
But a lot of Chargers fans think they're like 28th, and that's just not the case.
No.
Okay. Tyler, any other final thoughts before we head out?
Nope. Hoping we get some news coming up. Who's playing center tomorrow? Does Rashawn Slater sign his contract? Is he even there? All that sort of stuff coming up.
Yeah, so minicamp, I think, is the next 3 days. I believe Wednesday is when they have the open media practice day. But either way, we should have some takeaways to talk about, over the next couple of days here. So we are going to be live on Wednesday this week. Thursday evening, I'm going to be a little busy with my parents in town. But Wednesday at 4 is when we are currently scheduled to be live next. So hopefully you guys can tune in then. As always, make sure to leave a comment, like, review, rating on the audio platforms. All that does really help continue to grow the show. And this has been another episode of the Guilty as Charged podcast. See you on Wednesday. Bolt up.